Hey everyone, it's Helen from SMB Deal Hunter. Today we have Andrew Stern with us, an acquisition entrepreneur who bought a window washing business recently that he actually found through the SMB Deal Hunter newsletter, which I'm super excited about. Very excited to hear Andrew's story. Andrew, it's great to have you on today.
Great to be here, Helen. Thanks for having me.
Andrew, let's get started with your background. I know you've been a tech startup advisor, but tell us a little bit more. What were you doing prior to this, and kind of what got you into buying a business?
Yeah, so I had always dreamed of two things really, and they're kind of the same thing. One is advising businesses and helping them grow, and the other is advising businesses and helping them grow, but own those businesses. And I had been doing the first one for a while. I was more niche of tech startup entrepreneurs. These are people that have raised millions of dollars. Their teams are growing rapidly. Maybe it's a 31-year-old, they raised $5 million, they need to hire 20 people, and they've never done it before. And they've got advisors that are maybe super duper investors, their subject matter expertise, but they're not like a coach to help people grow and think about strategy. And so people would hire me. They still do, and I still love it. I still do this. And I work with them and I help them with growing their businesses and strategy. And that was going great. What happened was last year, a lot of entrepreneurs that were raising capital like no other, that slowed down. And that had me thinking and reflecting a little bit around a lot of the companies that I had equity in were all of a sudden not growing or didn't seem as valid in a lot of ways. And I remembered that I had this dream that I wanted to pursue, which was to buy businesses and grow them. And I didn't find myself being head of a private equity company that had $100 million under management. And I went down the rabbit hole of buying businesses, whether it's through SBA or under $3 million a year revenue. And I went down the rabbit hole deeply. And I feel like I'm very experienced in business and understand a lot of the moving parts. But I found this whole new niche that I wasn't aware of. And I went down that rabbit hole. I could talk more about the actual deal that I found. And I was really excited. And I know it's not so easy about being excited and finding a deal. There's a huge gap there. But that's kind of how it started. This was last summer. And I read Buy Then Build by Walker Diebel. And that to me, like, packaged everything very nicely and neatly in for me understanding it. And yeah, that's kind of my background a little bit. Happy to answer more questions on that.
Yeah, I'm curious, what made you go from sort of like the fast growth VC-backed tech startup world to more so like a boring business, if you will?
So I'm still in that other world of advising businesses there. Um, I don't see it as boring. I just see it as um, just another type of business. Um, I care deeply about working with people and helping them grow and do things that um, is going to help them and a business. And perhaps it's less sexy, so to speak, to like be helping wash windows and clean gutters, but it's a real service that people benefit from every day. And a lot of these businesses that are in that space, there's often a lot of opportunity to grow and like bring a lot of great energy, a lot of great insights to the people there. Um, and personally for me, like, I'm used to working in a corporate environment. I worked at IBM previously, and that was like as a consultant. So I saw all these Fortune 500 companies, and to like move an inch, you had to like collaborate with people, you had to communicate, you had to get buy-in. And for me, I'm I'm not running the show, but I'm able to like lay out strategy, direct where everything's going. And I love that I could have ideas to grow. It could be implemented and see them literally in a week or 2, 3 weeks. That was really exciting to me. And so I see it as two different things. I'm still in the super cool, innovative, tech world. Like some of my clients might see this interview and be like, "Whoa, I didn't know you were doing window washing stuff." And I'm open with people that I work with. So yeah, I'm still working with people that are doing really innovative things. But I like it. I think it's really great.
No, I love the dichotomy. That's awesome that you kind of see both sides. I guess why window washing? What kind of deals were you looking at? Like, how did you know that this is kind of what you wanted to get into?
Yeah, so just sat down and said, let's do a strategy session. And I sat down and I created a long list of criteria that I felt was um, decision maker and then like nice to have. And I like created a whole score system that a strategist would also suggest. And you're only as good as the actual criteria. So I think one was really good people at the organization, like really genuinely nice people, which I knew might actually be hard to find, but that was number one for me. And then number two, I thought about, I guess, strategy wise, not to give up my perhaps niche to the world here, that I feel like is great. But window washing is great because it's a repeatable business. I looked at a lot of businesses like window installation. And to me, that was like, whoa, we get to install something once and then we walk away. Like that's a lead business that's constant trying to get new customers. Anything service based, I really liked. And I just found this world of commercial window washing to be a world that there was low capital needed. There is a need for skilled labor, but it's not licensed labor. And you're able to scale pretty quickly if you get the lead flow going and the training going. And I really like that. And I felt like that was a really great niche to kind of move forward in and look at.
Did you look at some other deals as well? Was this like the first one you randomly saw, or yeah, what other deals kind of
Yeah,
crossed your table?
this was the first serious deal I looked at, which is absolutely crazy.
I know
Um,
timeline
I
is crazy. Like you were saying you started last summer reading Buy Then Build, April, not even a year later, you closed your
yeah.
first deal. I love
So
that.
so I looked at a couple deals. I looked at some gyms. I looked at some lawn companies and like cleaning companies. But this was the first deal where I saw it and I went in with it. And and I'll give some more details there. But like people like Andrew, how did you find this deal? And honestly, I did work. Like I worked really hard for 10 years, understanding business fundamentals, how to talk to people, how to like navigate situations. And I'll give an example in a second. But honestly, like if I could say, like I'm Jewish, the Jewish New Year is in September. Literally, like a week before, it's decided, so to speak, in like Jewish perspective, is like the success you'll have the following year is like decided on the Jewish New Year. And I was like, God, please, like, I'd love to find an opportunity that I could like find a great business. And literally a week later, your newsletter came in my inbox. It was forwarded from a friend. And I was like, this is it. And I pursued it. Um,
I
that's
love that.
that's one of the things I could say. But I will say this. Um, the business was an estate sale, not to get into the details there, but the owner had died and they marketed it as 20% seller financing. And I called the broker and I said, why do you have seller financing? Isn't this an estate sale? Like, wouldn't you want to have no seller financing? Like, don't you want to close the estate out? And he was like, yeah. I said, so why did you put seller financing? And he said, well, I thought people would want to offer seller financing. So I said, if I didn't offer seller financing, that wouldn't just be no seller financing. That would be like a huge potential reason to go with me. He was like, yeah, I guess so. And so I actually offered the same amount as someone else who didn't offer seller financing. And obviously that would have won it either way. But that guy owned a window washing business in Seattle. And he was a much clearer person to seemingly close the deal. He had done some deals before. And I spoke to the owner, I spoke to the broker, and I knew that when you speak to a broker, most people think, and I think this too, because I come from an investor perspective, like you need to prove to me, I'm the buyer, I'm the investor. You prove to me why I should buy your business. And a lot of brokers are turned off by that because actually they're trying to think, especially at these deal sizes, this was a $1.3 million deal. They want to understand, can this person close? And so I knew that from the beginning. And I was proving myself to them before the tables turn once I'm under LOI. But I knew that very clearly. And my tone, I knew I was being interviewed. I took that tone the whole time. And I think that's probably what won me the deal. I think the deal was on the market for a day before it got like 5, 6 offers. And then LOI like 3, 4 days later. And so, although I did find the deal and it sounds cool, I pursued it. I elegantly and eloquently, said perhaps the right things, which was genuine. And I offered something that the seller who was representing the estates felt like I would take care of this business and the employees, instead of just getting a little bit extra money. So that was something that I think really helped me close the deal, that if I didn't have that approach, I definitely wouldn't have won this deal.
No, that's super smart. And it definitely is a bit of a seller's market from that perspective, especially with these broker deals. They're super competitive and people often, I guess, first time buyers are often, coming in thinking that like they can just, they're trying to be pitched or something. And really
Yeah.
it's almost the other way around, right? It's like, why
Yeah.
are you going to be a good steward of my business? I'm
Yeah.
gonna have five other offers if this is a good business. So why you?
Yeah,
It's
and
it's
I was
interesting.
also like, I literally just sent my like brokerage statement. I'm like, here's all the cash I have, and then I can sell. And the guy was like, okay, like you didn't have to send this. And I was like, no, I do, because I want you to see the like. My goal is to convince you to get under LOI. Then from there, I could grill you and hopefully not renegotiate. But I knew that very, very intuitively, and that was just from my experience, I guess.
No, that's super smart. It's something we do too, is always like show proof of funds first before even have a conversation. Just, and I always tell our clients to do the same thing. And some people are like, is that too much information to share? And it's like, no, not at all. Like they need to know you have money to close. Because that's
So,
always the biggest unknown on the broker side. I'm curious, and you're the first person I've spoken to who bought a business from an estate sale. What was that process like? I mean, the seller wasn't the actual, I guess, operating like owner operator
right.
of the business, right? How did that whole process work? What do you think made the process a little different? I'm just curious to learn more.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into too many details just to protect the seller's privacy, which I think they would want to. But the seller who represented the estate was in the business. And so
Oh,
he acted as the business operator once the owner died. And so it was kind of interacting with the seller, although there were some other family members involved that didn't make it super clean. But I imagine their lawyer fees were a lot more than mine based on a lot of conversations they had, like a lot more. But besides that, it was fine.
yeah. Tell us more about, I guess, how you structured the deal. You mentioned no seller note. How
Yeah.
did you, I guess, know that the seller who represented the estate was gonna sort of transition the business to you properly? Like, how did you structure the deal?
Yeah. Um, I I did a carve out of 25%, I think, 6 months. So we're 3 months in. So they've got 3 months left before they get the remainder 25%. Um, I knew that I knew that I had to give no seller note, um, if I wanted to win the deal, and that's just what it was. And so I've got a 25%, you can call it, to make sure the business worked out, which isn't so much, but it's kind of like a seller note. I don't think it was in the LOI, to be honest. I think it came out during the purchase agreement. And I put that in there, or requested it to be in there. And they accepted it. Um, and yeah, and that's what I did. And so that looks like, if the business substantially changes, if there's any customers that are different. We actually had an accounts payable conversation without getting into too much detail. And we figured it out, but the seller was like, hey, can you say in writing that you're not going to claim against that 25%? So like it is a sticking point that they know that's there. The business needs to have a certain level of transition for 6 months. And that's been a good part that I put in there. So despite the competitive market where I couldn't have a seller financing, I was able to put a carve out of 25% that's in an escrow account right now. That'll be released in 3 months. And I see no reason why it wouldn't be at this point.
No, that's great. I mean, any sort of delayed payment is
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
No, that's super smart. And I feel like 25% is kind of a lot. I mean, I feel like a lot
Yeah.
of people who just have like, I don't know, escrow holdbacks are like 10% or something. So that's great.
Yeah, it was a good carve out. But honestly, like I guess what I do for a living is I work with people and can read them like extremely fast. and I kind of know the questions to push people's buttons and read them very quickly. And it did go fast, but I met with the seller, who's representing the estate. And I could just tell immediately, like, he's a stand-up guy, like extremely stand-up. And I could trust him first hesitantly. And now, like, I do very much trust him. And he's been extremely helpful in the business for two reasons. One, customers keep sending checks to his house, like huge to his house. And he is charging me his hourly rates, which I keep telling him, please do, to deposit checks, 100 times your hourly rate to the bank. And he's been very gracious in doing that, which has been great. And two, we just call him and ask him like question. We have customers that are coming from us from 3-4 years ago that are like, we're ready. And he just knows the situation with them. And he's been very helpful for that. And so I don't have so much experience at business at this level, but I imagine there's like a percentage that are like super duper in integrity. They're really nice people. They'll work with you. And I can't imagine I would say yes to a deal if it wasn't that kind of person.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And how did you guys finance the deal? I think you mentioned, you went through the SBA process. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about that.
Um, I literally called the broker while we were under LOI, and I said, I don't have an SMB, like I don't have a banker. Like, can you introduce me to one? And he introduced me to the banker. I met him. His name is Ryan Collins. He's amazing. He really is amazing. Shout out to Ryan. And we were able to finance 90% of the purchase with debt. The debt service coverage worked out very well, which is great. If it didn't, it wouldn't have been great. And I actually raised 4% of that 10% with some friends and family that just helped me personally be able to raise. I didn't have enough money otherwise. And then I put in about 6%. And I guess I'm just going to get to the chase and just go to the big pain in the butts about the SBA process. So the bank that agreed to do the loan with us, they all of a sudden went dark. We were supposed to close February 1st, and
The original bank.
the original bank, they were supposed to close, and they just stopped responding. Now, I didn't mind for two reasons. One, I had a child on January 23rd. And so
Congratulations.
thank you so much, Rosa. She's awesome. She's 5 months now, almost 6. And that was number one. Number two, I had gone through 2 insurance brokers, and they just kind of ghosted me and just were super delayed and didn't know what they were talking about, even though they said they did, about this niche type of insurance. And I called my friend who's like the insurance agent who doesn't do this, but he learned it up basically for me at his big insurance company. And it just took forever. His insurance company, like his brokerage, they just have a lot of salespeople, but not that many people that actually put quotes together. And it just took forever to get together an insurance quote. And I assumed it would take like 2 weeks. It took like 3 months. And
Oh, wow.
so I didn't mind that it was taking so long because I wasn't ready anyway. I didn't want to tell them that my insurance wasn't ready, and I'm glad I didn't. They just basically ghosted us. And then I was speaking to the broker, Ryan. Ryan's been great. Ryan was like, I don't know. They're basically ghosting me. Like, I don't have answers for you. And he was like the representative. And then we found out like 3-4 weeks later that bank was being bought by another bank, and they just froze all deals. And that was crazy interesting. And at that point, I'm like, should I look for another lender? Then I have to start the whole process again, all documents, and then also have to give them Q4. I have to give them January, and January is like the slowest month for them. January and February are very slow months for the business, and it's not that seasonal. And so I was like, let's hold our breath because the package is in. Was my recommendation. And the whole time I'm like going back and forth, insurance, like very complicated. And there were some mistakes made and all these things. And anyway, we finally got the green lights March 1st. So it wasn't so crazy, but it was like 5 long weeks later. And then the new bank had assigned a contractor SBA closer coordinator, and they basically did nothing for a week, and then the person got fired. And then they brought in another person, and it was crazy. And the month of March was like back to back. They were asking crazy questions. I didn't know this, but if my investors that came in, the SBA needs to see 3 months of cash in a bank. And so if I had just taken their money in January and had it sit for 3 months, that would have been better. But instead, they, and I'm glad I raised from friends and family. There's a couple of mentor-esque people that I was going to raise from that I'm glad I didn't, because I'm literally calling my brother's banker best friends. And I'm like, hey, I need 3 months of your personal bank statements in the next hour and your brokerage statements. And he was like, no problem. I trust you. But I couldn't do that with like my Goldman Sachs mentor person. They I had a friend who invested from his Fidelity account. It went into my Bank of America account. And the SBA people were like, it says it from JP Morgan. So where's this in between account? And I was like, I don't know. What do you want me to do? They're like, we can't accept this unless you prove it. So I Googled Fidelity JP Morgan. I'm like, here's proof. There's a partnership. All Fidelity wires go through JP Morgan. They're like, that's not good enough. So I had a banker from Bank of America. Thankfully, I have someone I could reach out to. He sent a statement. This was from Fidelity. JP Morgan is the in-between person. And they were like, okay. And this was like a $5,000 wire. And so it was just nuts back and forth. A week before, they wanted a holding company that I created to be named additionally named insured. And the insurance company's like, that takes 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, I've got 4 days. And I'm like, okay, my friend's the guy. I'm like asking him to call in favors. He ended up resigning from his job the day after I left. And I knew that was happening. So like he was kind of staying for me. It was a crazy process. I have a long list of more things that I sent to all my investors when I closed. It was very painful. I knew it would be painful. It was definitely more stressful to close the deal than it's been running the business. I'm just glad I went through. I had a great lawyer. One thing that I'll say about lawyers, I don't know if this is interesting to people. So I knew that I wanted to have a great lawyer, but I knew that lawyers could either pay on you can pay up front or pay as you go, or you can pay at the end. And so I really wanted to find someone where I could have a bill rack up and get paid at deal close. And I did find someone, and he's been great. And that was just super helpful for cash flow purposes, because I wasn't ready to spend $10,000-$20,000 on my personal money before a deal closed. And so just pay that through the deal. And that was really helpful.
Wow, that's great that you're
Yeah.
able to find a lawyer who's willing to do that. I feel like that's very rare.
His
But
name
that's
is
fantastic.
Brennan. He's great. Brennan Block, I want to say. And he's awesome. He's really good at it. And I'm just looking up his email. Yeah, Brennan Block.
That's
Totally
awesome.
recommend him. He's really great.
I'm curious with I mean literally out of a movie, but that's awesome you're able to get the deal closed.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people don't think about insurance as a holdup, but I've now, I feel like I've heard it and seen it a few times now. So
I did not
um
have to deal with any licensing issues. Um, Actually, that's not true, but I'll tell a quick licensing story if you think it's helpful. But
yeah.
uh, I didn't have to deal with like, and sometimes the owner is the HVAC license holder, and you have to get it transferred. And for the SB, that's particularly an issue because the previous owner has to give up all equity in the business, and so it could be challenging for other businesses.
I guess in terms of going back to, raising that 6% or sorry, the
Yeah.
4%, right? From of
Yes.
that 10% down. How did you structure the deal with your friends and family? I think a lot of folks who are looking at buying a business, they're also, it's easy to go to friends and family and ask for money, but yeah, what did those if you're comfortable, like
Yeah.
how did you structure that deal?
Yeah, great question. I spent a ridiculous amount of time on this. And a lot of my friends that I raised from, but just a lot of my friends have done a lot of their own, we'll call it projects, whether it's starting their own investment funds or starting their own deals. So on one hand, I have a group of friends that are very familiar with giving friends money. On the other hand, they're more sophisticated. And I literally had a friend saying, I'll do the whole round And then when I spoke to him, it's like he wants his terms that he has in mind. And so I'll share the terms. I basically created a 4-step waterfall. Okay, so bear with me. The first step is all of the investors get their money back at a 10% per year yield. Then step 2 is I get all of my money back at a 10% per year yield. Step 3 is those investors get 90% of proceeds until they've doubled their money. And then I get 90% moving forward. I felt like it was a way to give them a super high chance of doubling their money without, I'm basically not making any money until they've doubled their money. And then I will make a large portion moving forward. So there isn't ridiculous upside for them, which my venture capital investors weren't too excited about because they're used to like super high upside. But I'm basically making no money until they've doubled their money. And I felt like I was willing to take that on to say, I'll take upside in the business, but I don't want to get that until you've doubled your money. And people like that as they structured it like that.
No, that's smart. I haven't heard of that exact structure of these deals, but that's
I,
really
I,
smart.
I made it up and no one's heard of it. But I felt like that made sense for me. I'll probably do this moving forward because now that I've done it once. Yeah.
And what happens in the event of an exit? I don't know if you're looking to sell the company one day, but if you do sell the company, what does that mean for you and your investors?
Yeah, so I'm not looking to sell. Like I think it's a great company. I'm with it for years. Like my holding company is called Gone Capital, which is Hebrew for garden. And it's like plant things, nurture them, have them grow. We'll see if there's other companies beyond this window cleaning company. But it's just like nurture it, have it grow, and like that's what I see it as. Like keep growing and keep growing it. And like I really like this company. I don't have any plans to sell, but it would just follow that waterfall. As each one fills up, so to speak, it would go to the next stage.
No, I love that. And I guess going back to when you were actually going through the acquisition process, how did diligence look like? How did you run the diligence process?
The diligence process was interesting. I definitely relied on my insight into talking to people. I had a really great Q of E provider, quality of earnings, that I was just like rip the entire everything apart. Like they asked random bank statements, not bank statements, random contracts, matching it to line items on the bank statements and revenue and checks. And like they went through the whole web of everything. And there was a particularly weird scenario where they missed a lot of revenue in 2020 and recouped it in 2021, which was a couple months later, but it ended up being a different year. So I was like, make sure that matches. I was really so I relied on a QOV provider. Maybe I spent a little more on that. That was my only real expense that I had beforehand. I was really sensitive to diligence fatigue, DD fatigue. And I kept calling the seller being like, how are you? Like, I'm excited, just like hyping him up. And then being like, we're starting QOV tomorrow. It's going to be crazy. Also, the bank was asking questions, insurance was asking questions. Like, we use a couple chemicals that isn't such a big deal, but the insurance like asked a lot of questions on that. And I guess I just ran my own. There's a lot of great blogs out there. I asked a couple friends that are investors how they approach things. I spoke to the employees at length, all of them. I spoke to all of them at length, which some owners wouldn't have done. I don't know if I
Yeah.
would have, but I spoke to the employees at length. That was the main thing. And I spent hours with them, honestly, talking. They shared with me information that if I was the seller, I wouldn't want them sharing with the buyer. And I knew that, like, I was like, there's no way they would show, it wasn't bad information, but they're like, here's the skeletons, here's what to be concerned about. And they just went through lots of stuff. Like my notes are ridiculous and I haven't reviewed them since, but like on just learning about the business. And I felt very comfortable in feeling like I understood the business. And yeah, I mean, maybe the seller really just trusted me because I maybe am trustworthy and just was very respectful. And I requested to speak to his employees and I thanked him beforehand. I was like, I'm calling this person tomorrow. I just want to let you know I'm not going to ask about these things. And then after I'm like, I spoke about these things. And I guess I felt that made the seller feel very comfortable with me just speaking to his employees also and learning information.
No, that's great. It seems like, I mean, that's great that you're able to speak to the employees. I feel like most business owners don't want that to happen, and it then
Yeah.
becomes like this huge surprise. And this also definitely de-risks the transition in terms of like
Yeah.
people just, getting up and leaving when you announce you're the new owner of the business. They already know.
Correct.
No, that's super interesting. And I guess what did anything sort of jump out during the due diligence phase out of those conversations that made you kind of second guess the business at all, or were you did it just make you feel more comfortable in your decision to buy the business?
I think the biggest concern I had, which is no longer the case, which is great, is that everyone's just going to walk out. It was pretty low because the previous owner had passed away and the person running the business was running it and he wasn't so involved in the day to day. It was really the office and the office employees, and a lot of the customers don't care. Same name, same technicians. They're coming to clean our properties. Um, but I didn't know. I didn't speak to any. I spoke to one customer, our biggest customer, and I just said nothing's going to change, including prices. Um, and they were happy with that, and I signed a contract with them, and I made the deal contingent on us signing our contract with that biggest customer, which is about 20% of revenue. Um, so that was another thing that I did. I had the deal contingent on the biggest customer re-signing, and we spoke beforehand, and we re-signed officially like a week or two before, which SBA never checked on the deal, but we did sign it for the deal. I think that was my biggest concern is everyone's going to walk out, including employees, including the customers. But I felt comfortable. I spoke to the employees. I let them know that they should feel comfortable and, I'm here for them. Yeah.
Oh, it's interesting. I guess I'm curious to learn more just about the commercial, I guess, window washing business in general. Who are your customers? I guess you
Yeah.
mentioned
So,
contracts. Are they on sort of like auto renewing contracts? Are they like a year? Like what does that look like?
so it's we call it a contract. It's really just like a price page that they agreed to sign. And they could they could agree to sign it and then not have us come, and nothing
Yeah.
stopping them from that. A lot of our relationships are just made over decades, which I really liked about this business. We don't have a lead engine. We don't do any marketing, which I'm changing. If you go on our website, uh, it looks like it's from the 80s because it is. Like someone's like, that's great. Like there's so much opportunity. I'm like, that's true, but it's like really old. And so we're revamping that. We have no Google reviews. As a matter of
Wow.
fact, there was a competition that I wouldn't be able to get access to a Google profile. And I was like, all right, bragging rights for a year. And they're like, okay. And within an hour, I got access. They're like, how did you get access? And so we now have access to our Google profile. We're going to put pictures up there. We're going to get our first review, hopefully in like 2 weeks. And we just have built relationships because we do really good quality work. And I felt that in the seller. That's my value system. Like I want to set the bar high quality. We have premium pricing because of that. And they just know us. They know our names. A lot of them are HOAs. A lot of them are retirement homes, and they just look for people to come clean their windows with great quality. And I was very much into that, and it seemed like a really nice business to be a part of.
No, it's interesting. How often are you guys going in and, cleaning windows for each client?
You could say once a year, maybe twice a year, maybe every other year.
Oh,
Sometimes we'll go
wow.
other people. that are cheaper, and then they don't do as good of a job, and then they'll call us to clean up the mess sometimes. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize they would only clean their windows once or twice a year. That seems like not a lot, but
So if you've got like 8 stories and it's whatever, $5,000 for the year, some people do twice a year with us.
yeah,
But gutters, roofs,
wow,
once or twice a year.
got it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of acquiring customers through word of mouth and referrals and things like that. And just,
We
I
are
guess,
like, we're like
repeat.
full. We're like totally full. I am still trying to figure out how much business we might turn down because we're full. So I'm working on hiring skilled technicians, training them up. They were running a business before me that was like, show up, fill the schedules, we make really good money, and go home. And it's a great model. My goal is not to run everyone into the ground and overwork them, but there's a huge opportunity to refresh brands, to hire one technician at a time and fill a full schedule, get some operating systems smoother, and then slowly make it go faster. That's what I'm looking to do. Yeah.
No, that's super smart. I'm curious, and you mentioned earlier on that you like window washing because it's skilled labor but not licensed, which is interesting. How have you found hiring to be hiring, I guess, the skilled labor?
So I don't know yet. I can answer that best question better in a month. Um, but yeah, I got to figure out exactly when. But I think after an interview, we're just going to put people on ladders and see if they're afraid of heights. And all of our technicians, they could train people right now. We've got a bunch of really great technicians, not really any novices, and so they're going to be able to like potentially run crews, each of them, which is awesome. And the previous the seller who worked at the company, he is able to train people. And also, I just found out that the Washington State Department of Safety, they have people that can come out and not train people in washing, but train people in safety and knots and tying and hanging. And I'm in the middle of auditing our business with the non-violation division, but the safety audit division of the Department of Safety, to just like make sure we're all super safe. I trust these guys, but just refresh everything. And so I'm figuring that process out now. I think it'll have some challenges, but I like our crew and their ability to train people up.
No, that's great. I'm curious, it's been what, just over 90 days since you bought the business. What does the transition look like? I think a lot of people will be curious to also understand, how have you been managing the business remotely? The business
Yeah,
is
I
in
was just
what?
gonna jump on that. Yeah, so one thing we didn't
Yeah,
talk
talk
about
about
is
that.
the business is across the country. It's in the opposite corner. I'm in Florida, the business is in Washington State, which is nuts. I'm so grateful that we had a bank that believed in me to be able to do that. We have people that run the business. Like I was very clear with them who would be running the business, the details of them, and their responsibilities. But I'm working completely remote. This is my beautiful garage office here. We've got AC. It's Florida. It's currently, since we started, tropical storming outside. And I'm in the opposite corner of the country. It's forced me to only work on the business. Like literally. I have a friend I spoke to in Seattle. He's in the field right now, and he wants to work on the business, but he can't. He's working in the business. And so if I was sitting in the office, there's no way I wouldn't be pulled into fires that get pulled on. Instead, I'm finding them out at the end of the day because I'm empowering all of these employees to make decisions whenever someone, and this is just my executive coaching training. If someone comes to me and says, what should I do with this? If I could just give a executive coaching little
Let's do
idea
it.
here. This to me is one of the biggest things I work on with my entrepreneurs that I work with, is getting them to realize they shouldn't be an answering machine. If someone comes to you and says, hey, what should I do with this? The worst thing you could ever do is tell them what to do. Because what you're doing is you're training them that you are the place for answers. And really bad managers will train them that they're the only place for answers. If they do anything without speaking to them first, then it's bad news. That's horrible. That doesn't mean that you should let them run free. And that's what they think the opposite is, the bad managers. You need to empower them. You need to know that they need to inform you of certain decisions. They need to consult with you on certain decisions. And maybe they're empowered to make their own decisions and inform you after. And so I'm huge on, if someone comes to me, I'm not going to tell them what I think ever, unless they're going to give me a recommendation themselves or what they think they should do. And even if I disagree with what they think, I might sometimes say, you should do that. I think that's great. Maybe I would have done it this way, but you should do it what you're thinking. And I want to train them to think on their own, because forget about running a business remotely or the dream where it runs itself. But if you want to have employees that are empowered and don't come to you for everything, you want to push it back on them. And that's what I try and do as much as I can.
Love that. I need to start doing that more myself. So love that advice.
Yeah.
I'm curious, did you have someone you internally promoted? Was there already sort of a general manager in place? You bring
Yeah.
someone in from outside? What did that look like?
There's an office manager. She's great. She's been in the business for many years. Her sibling actually passed away like a week after LOI, and the deal was held up for 5 weeks because the seller, there's so many layers to this deal. And I think every deal, there's so many layers. The seller wanted to give her space to mourn for her sibling. And I refused to move forward without speaking to her. And I was in no rush, and it was very respectful. Refuse is a strong word, but I wasn't willing to move forward at all. And it was kind of on pause for 5 weeks in the beginning. But she's the key. When I started, I was like, I got to find someone. I started networking in Seattle with like people that can run businesses like this. But she's been great. She's amazing. I didn't know that when I first put this business under LOI. And we also we call it an office manager. We have an operations manager. And then we recently, since the business started, I was introduced to someone, and she was great. I wasn't planning on hire her. She's our account manager. And those three in the office crush it. Like crush it. They do great. I try and set them up as best as I can, and they do a great job. And yeah.
That's great. And how are you
Yeah.
thinking about incentivizing them to feel like they're, you know, I guess take ownership in the business, if you will?
I think the best way is just to value their ideas. And it's easy to say money. I did adjust people's salaries as I came in. I'm using the word adjust. Maybe there's a better word, but like I basically bumped everyone.
Yeah.
What I felt was just fair market value. Like one of the people in the office is just like, I felt was way under. Like I gave her a big bump, and she was kind of like, thank you. And I'm like, yes, this isn't even like, this is just like normal decency for what you're worth. Amazon's based in Seattle. Someone was like, I was like afraid she was like going to go to Amazon. She's a very sharp, technically capable woman. And I think a lot of people do want money, but a lot of people just want to be in a place where they feel recognized. They can make autonomous decisions. They feel valued when I speak to them. I was speaking to someone today, I'm involved with helping a lot of people with job stuff. And she had let her manager know last night that she resigns. And the manager only messaged her at like noon saying, hey, let's speak at 3:30 about your email. By the way, I have some questions about this other thing. And it's like, that's a real manager at a real company that is literally clueless. And so I think people just want, right. And I think there's a theme, if I could say, in this process, is just like be human in this process. You're dealing with humans. I think it's easy. And it's hard for me to say this because I wasn't months or years in the deal searching place. So I say this hesitantly because it was really ridiculous how I found this deal. But so I didn't have any fatigue with this approach, but just like being human as best as possible. Instead of like going to the numbers. And yes, I did send my brokerage statement immediately, but I was like, hey, here's my statement, just so you know I'm legitimate. And I feel like that tone and approach has taken me a really long way.
No, I can totally see why that would be. I guess with the current sort of office managers, account managers, operation manager, did their roles change much after you bought the business? Like what's your role like now versus theirs? And did you sort of, are they taking on more responsibility now?
They took on a little more. The previous seller operator was doing all invoicing. and our office manager's running invoicing. I'm working with her on it, but she's running it. I think that's about it. They do a really great job. We have the current seller was doing all invoicing and bidding on projects. I can't bid on projects. I don't have the skill set for being local. So we've been relying on the previous seller, and he's been gracious, and he's charging his purchase agreement rate for us, and he's been very helpful. But we're hiring for that right now, and we're hopeful on that. We've got a nice lowdown of knowledge transfer. Our office staff knows how to do bidding as well. Our technicians know how to do bidding, but we need someone who can just at a moment's notice or a couple times a week go and do that. And so we're working on that. I basically I have a bunch of admin responsibilities, but I'm really just working on the business, hiring people, systems, handbook, safety protocols, logo, website, like all on the business stuff is what I'm working on. And I imagine we're just moving so much faster because there's just one full-time person doing that.
Yeah, I got that makes total sense.
Yeah.
What does the first 90 days look like, I guess? Like what have you been focusing on? Like anything
Yes.
unexpected? You only went to the business once, but what did
Yeah.
that look like?
The biggest things I've been focusing on is just basically holding on for dear life. Like we had over 100 like certificates of insurance that we had to reissue and resend. And that was like 2.5 weeks of full-time work. We had issues with healthcare. One of our employees had like a root canal the first week, and that was like 3 full days to get like that employee to feel like that the insurance was there because there's issues submitting health insurance. We still have checks. The seller is on a 2-week road trip right now, and we've got about estimating $25,000 in his mailbox in checks and physical checks that we're waiting for him to come back at so we can cash them. Thankfully, we can float it. So just like it was like a ridiculous amount of admin things that are kind of still going on, and just some cash flow things. Thankfully, the business ran smooth, but van issues, van breaking down, not having systems in place. I'm not there. Usually, the previous, owner would have dealt with a lot of those things. How to throw money at the problem, not so much. Mostly admin stuff, and then it's slowly been now transitioning into like real productive on the business stuff.
Got it. No, that's
Yes.
interesting. And how are you
Honestly, the
juggling?
biggest thing for me was closing the deal was the most stressful. And as someone who's ambitious, who wants to get this deal done, I was like, if it was a second or third or fourth or fifth deal, not that I'm going to do those, I'd be like, okay, if it falls through, that's fine. But I really wanted this to happen. And I know that so many things could have had it fallen apart, that it was so stressful. I really, and thankfully the first couple of weeks I had so much admin stuff to do. It was kind of mindless. And it was like a nice decompression thing to do. But closing the deal was definitely the most stressful. And then after the fact, it's about, in my opinion, just like bringing love, empowering people, bringing real intellectual, strategic guidance to it. Yeah, and I will add, I don't know how much time you have. I'm fine continuing chatting, but August 1st, we've got our first like company day. Like I scheduled it in for all of our technicians to be off work that day. I literally have scheduled like 6 weeks
Love
in
that.
advance because our schedule's full. And we're just gonna do a day. It's 2 days. Second day is gonna be a fun day. The first day is going to be our values, our mission, presenting them a little bit of a different compensation structure. That's going to be a little more incentive based on certain behaviors versus just a bonus check. And yeah, I'm excited to kind of like really build something here. We've got a bunch of handful of employees, but like I want to set this up to grow in a really powerful way. Yeah.
I love how thoughtful you are and you're being in thinking about, growing this business and making sure you're treating your employees well and all of those
Yeah.
things. I guess I'm curious, and I can't believe we're like an hour in. What the heck? Crazy.
Yeah.
So sorry we're running a little over. Hope it's okay if you have
Yeah.
an extra couple minutes, but I'm curious, how are you juggling your executive coaching business, a baby, as well as this new business? How's that going?
I'm very tired a lot. That's really how it's going. I actually moved into a new house 3 weeks ago. So
Okay, let's add another thing in there.
it's been really crazy, really crazy. Um, it's just kind of like it's just nonstop. And I just show up and just, so what I was doing, I'm still doing executive coaching, but I basically really worked on the skill set of just showing up, clearing everything out of my brain, and just being fully present with whatever I'm doing as a skill set. And so, like right now, I'm working with 10 different companies for as an executive coach, but
Wow.
I'm not, but like I just have this skill set of just clearing my brain. And we could talk about some of the meditative stuff that I've done in the past and meditative techniques that like to like clear my brain and be fully present. I'm accessing all of that regularly. So I just very regularly showed up to a business. There's a founder who doesn't care about any of my other companies, doesn't care about any of the other projects I'm working on. It's his world, all that he cares about. And for me, literally, and anyone who's done like meditative stuff, this is familiar language, just like empty myself and just be fully present with them. And in the minutes that I'm starting to work with someone, I'm getting like bits of information, reminding myself of all the world that they're dealing with, all their employees, their names. Like at 3:59, if you would ask me what's their chief of staff, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But like at 4:01, I'll be like, it's Steve, and he's got a sister this, and he's dealing with this. And I guess it's a skill set that I've mastered, and my schedule is super scheduled. Um, and yeah, I really just it's in some ways nonstop, but it's been really great. I mean, I love it. I will say this if I can. I don't know. I'm happy to continue to spend time. One thing, this is maybe more my executive coaching insights here, but I think a lot of people have this dream to do nothing all day. And like, if you really push them, they'd be like, I want to do nothing all day. Like that's the dream in like a beautiful house. And like this background, maybe the lighting can be better. It doesn't look super cool. But like Helen, you're wherever you're posted up, that looks like super cool. Amazing sunlight. You've got the back room there and like awesome. Like if you really push them, they'd say do nothing, have a lot of money, and like just chill out all day. And if you really spend time thinking about that, it's just kind of silly. It's just silly. Like you're gonna spend nothing all day. Like I challenge my clients, especially ones that like are about to sell their company for $200 million, and they're like, "What am I going to do with my time? Like, I'm worth $200 million. I don't want to have kids. This one particular person, and like, what am I going to do with my time?" And I challenge them to say, "Well, what do you want to be for the world? What do you want to contribute to the world?" And um, to me, if you really like sit with that, integrate that, it's like, and it doesn't mean you have to be selfless. It could be you want to be selfish or contribute to yourself, but like when I've shifted that to say I'm here for the world, which includes myself, my family, my kids, and people beyond me, then it's like a privilege to work hard all day. And I definitely need to take breaks and vacation, and I love my weekends. But like Monday morning, I'm going for 5 days straight, and that's helped me a lot to like be nonstop.
All of that. No, that's great advice. And yeah, I couldn't imagine just sitting around doing nothing. I feel like there's nothing worse to me than being idle. So
Yeah, but
I
I
hear
think a
you
lot. I
there.
think a lot of people that may follow you, may be listening. I'd really challenge you guys to be like, do you really want to like buy a company, have it make $300,000 a year for the rest of your life, and you do nothing? Like that is a nice place to be, but you could mimic that by just having a couple good nights sleep. But like, what do you want to be for the company? Do you want to lead people? It doesn't mean you have to work 80 hours a week. It could mean you work 20 hours a week. Yeah.
No, that's great advice. And I know we're, past time, but any sort of final words of wisdom, especially for those first time business buyers out there. I always like to ask this question, is business buying everything you expect it to be? And yeah, anything you want to say to folks sort of just starting this journey.
So maybe I would have said what I just said, which is that like you're here for a purpose in life. And if business buying is what that is for you, then like it's a huge responsibility. Maybe I would have said that, which is more inspiring, but I think what might be more practical. I can't say keep moving, keep trying, because I didn't do that. I really got really lucky on a first deal and I was prepared. If you've listened this far, you can see my background. It wasn't just, got lucky in a coin flip and I worked hard for it, but I just got really lucky on like the hardest, most unknown part of this. I had a friend call me who's in a completely different profession, and he wants to buy a business. And he heard from my wife that I did this. And I started talking to him about all the skills that I needed. And I realized to successfully do this, there's like, I don't know, 8 to 10 super distinct skills that you need to have like a 6 or 7 out of 10 to like feel confident and competent to like pull it off and like not feel like you're doing fraud or you're missing something wildly or you're getting like taken advantage of or something like that. So I guess my advice is less inspiring and more like work hard to get these skills. There's like 8 skills that are distinct: fundraising, legal, buying, running, operating, marketing. Like all these skills are super distinct. So maybe give yourself some patience and love that you're not there potentially yet. But keep working hard, learning the skills. Helen's a great person, I'm sure, to follow to learn a lot of those skills with. Yeah, I think that's what I'd say at the end, and you can do it.
Yeah, well, I love that. It's great advice. Well, Andrew, thank you for going over time with me today. Really appreciate it. I know other people listening in are going to feel the same way. So thank you again for your time today, and I'm
Pleasure.
sure we'll chat soon. Let's please stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Helen.